record on the computer. Okay, welcome everyone to the final meeting of CGO 7, meeting number 6. And I suppose we'll just dive straight in and then we can have any more informal conversation afterwards. So no, you don't want Discord, you want the agenda. So there's the agenda. I put the link in also Discord, or I probably can, if someone can dump it into chat as well, if anyone can't see it there. Is everyone can see that? Yeah. Okay.
I'm having all kinds of technology issues, but
yeah,
I can see it.
You can see it. Okay, good. Okay. All right. If we start as usual with our friends in Treasury, and if you, Andre or Miroslav, if you can give us an update on payments, recent payments.
Okay. This is the last meeting, so we need to pay for the meeting minutes for this meeting, and then we need to decide what are we going to do with the remaining funds. So if we can decide that this meeting, so that we know when IRG pays out the final batch, that we can, so that we can do this quickly.
The town hall slides have been paid in advance, haven't they?
Yes, yes,
okay,
they have.
Okay, so it's just Livia for
Thank you.
You're welcome, Nelson. And yeah, so maybe oh, Anson's dropped some.
So there was a payment from this group on Tuesday, is that right?
Yes, that was for the Fund 8 CGO.
That was
okay.
The purpose of that was because of the short notice, and really to make sure that because of currency fluctuations, all that was just sent out, and that's going to be sent out under commitments, meeting commitments. So that goes under meeting commitments. But okay, and it's also so that we don't have to discuss the Fund 8 proposal in this meeting. So we don't. There's no need to discuss that Fund 8 proposal until the first Fund 8 meeting, which will be the end of June. But what we need to discuss is when we do our final reports. This is mostly what this meeting is going to be about, actually, is final report. When we do the final report and close everything down, it's where does the money go to the deliverables. Now we can discuss that maybe it's better if we discuss that towards the end of the meeting, because maybe we can get an idea throughout the meeting of how much work is being done on each deliverable. Does anyone object to that? No. Okay. Yeah. I think that's logical, because maybe we get an idea of whether it's going to be divided equally or whether some people are doing more work than others. Okay, moving on to town hall slides. Alison, you did the town hall slides. Would you like to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So after getting over my initial irritation that my slide started at 105 and kicking off at hour 2 of the town hall, no, I've talked way too much about that last night. So I think that I'm kind of settling into a cadence here that I give the history of who the group is and where we came from, an update of what's going on in governance, and then I started with an update of parameter changes yesterday. Welcome feedback on that. Barring any objections, I thought I'd continue with that general format, just so it becomes, an expectation of what CGO is going to be talking about. I had the added fun last night of the rug getting pulled out from under all of us, I think, a bit. I think everybody thought the challenge budgets were denominated in USD. There seems to be some massive confusion around that, whether it's USD or ADA. So I think we as a community need some clarity on that. And since I was talking about it in the moment, I feel a personal responsibility to make a clearer statement about that the next time I have the opportunity, so that it's clear to everybody whether the challenge budgets are denominated in dollars or ADA, which is kind of a big deal and a parameter that we need to have clarity on.
Yeah, when it's appropriate. I think I understand it, although but it's true that I don't feel they've communicated in writing clearly enough, but no, I think I understand their intent.
But Kendrick, I
it's
think
fine.
they don't understand. They don't understand our intent.
Can I just interrupt? Can we take that to any other business?
Yeah, and let me just
sure.
quickly say that I got some private messages from IOG that they need to figure it out and get back to us.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I do think we need to discuss that, but if we could discuss that at any other, I'll put it there, any other business, because so, but I think, I mean, going back to the slides, yeah, I mean, my personal feedback, I think that's great what you're doing, Alison, and I think the actual slide on the update on parameter changes is particularly pertinent in what we're doing. But yeah, I'd like to hear what other people think about the slides as well. Sorry, Vanessa.
Yeah, to my shame, I wasn't at Town Hall last night, so I didn't hear. I'm sure they were brilliant. But I was just going to ask, are you planning to kind of like highlight a different area of CGO's work each time, or are you going to focus on parameter changes generally each time? Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I see exactly what you mean. I think parameter changes is enough overarching and impacts every aspect of the work that we do that it's worth speaking to that slide every time. Now, that said, if there's a different area of CGO work going on that should be highlighted either for a specific meeting or on a regular basis, I think that makes a lot of sense. I just would look for input on that.
I think my instinct is that, yeah, focus on parameter changes, but it just occurred to me that in the next time we have to do an update, I think everyone's going to be talking about DREPs because they will have had the DREP workshops and blah, blah. So maybe that would be a focus. I don't know.
I mean, to be fair, there are 3 slides. I mean, there's the kind of slide that starts with the background, and then there's an update about governance in general, isn't there, Alison? And then there's a parameter slide as well.
Yeah, that's a good point, Stephen. And so, Vanessa, I had highlighted that the first DREP workshops were and are occurring today. And so I can definitely give an ongoing update of what's going on with DREPs as it relates to what's happening in governance.
Yeah.
I think it'll also matter if there are new parameter changes, because if there haven't been any in the 2-week period, then it doesn't make sense to report.
Yeah, Phil, I was thinking about that, and that's exactly right. And I don't want to have a slide or speak to something that doesn't need to be repeated. But the flip side to that is that there's a different audience in Town Hall every week. And I think it's helpful to ask the community if they've noted any parameter changes, because I think it is hard to keep track of all of these.
I was thinking we need some sort of input mechanism, whether that be a simple form or something that people can highlight and question what they see as being parameter changes, so that we're not the only ones deciding what a parameter change might look like.
And perhaps take that input and use like top 1 or top 2 to say, hey, what people think should be a parameter change. Yeah.
And I was thinking, rather than having a forum, I just keep sending people to our Discord server to give their input.
Yeah, we could probably make a place for like input there.
I also, do you think it should be informal at the moment then, Phil, not a kind of form or something?
Yeah, we can just discuss it with them in that space and kind of work out if it makes sense to put in. And like community discussion's always better, I think, right? Like that makes more sense. I also just wanted to point out you mentioned total amount or total budget, but it needed to say total budget for proposers, because there's additional budget for the QA process and voters that I don't think was included in that amount. I'm not sure. So
you're absolutely right, Phil. That's a great clarification. That was the total budget for proposers. Yeah.
So I think it just needed a
clarification.
A bit more clarity there. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. Good point.
If there's anything, unless there's anything else anyone would like to add to that, I think it's a great job you're doing with slides, Alison, and it's providing a good model to go forward. But if there's unless there's any other comments, I'll carry on, because time is of the essence. So on the fund date proposal, congratulations everyone, we were successfully voted for and funded. All I'm going to say on this, because I don't really want to get distracted by confused between the fund date and the fund 7 proposal. So the fund date proposal, we've distributed funds, as Andre said. The reason why we did that was because they were going to be released and we needed to get commitments. We have commitments to fund 8 proposal. I think the only new commitments is Torsten and George are going to join us. George may not join us in meetings, but he's certainly going to work on the challenge setting side. Torsten will join in meetings. And that's all that we have on Fund 8, unless there's anyone who absolutely needs to say something about the Fund 8 proposal. Could we move on so we don't get distracted by the Fund 8 proposal? But if I'm still opening it up, if you want to ask anything on the Fund 8 proposal, please ask now. No, okay, so good. Go back to the brief overview of the project board. It's a bit out of date, the project board, but I'll just quickly run through it. We need to do onboarding for Fund 8. We'll do that later this month after our Fund 7 stuff is over. We're currently doing, that's in current progress. We're currently doing the meeting here for that, and we are working towards now a final report. And in progress is the which is what we're going to discuss at this meeting mostly, is the different parts of the final report, which are Oversight of Catalyst Circle, DREPs, governance parameters, and challenge setting. And I won't go over what we've done, because what we've done is done, and I don't think that's going to be of particular interest unless people want to check the project board themselves. So if we go back to the meeting agenda and we go back into our scope and deliverables, and we start on the first one, which is challenge setting. Now, we had various discussions over the past weeks and months over how to do oversight of challenge setting, and it seemed to where the direction. I know, Phil, you went off and talked to Roe and all that kind of stuff, and in order to get something done, really, it seemed to go towards George doing something for the final report. And I've reached out to George, and I met with George, and George has agreed to do a one-page summary and conclusion for that looks back over the past 3 months on challenge setting issues. And I think we had discussions with you, Alison, as well on this, maybe about George seemed to be the appropriate person to do this. So is there any comments or suggestions on that, or do you think that's, given the time that we have and given that George has a good view on that, I just thought he would be the right person to do that part of our final report. Okay.
I've got a comment, sorry.
Yeah, go on.
And I think I'll have to contact George about this directly to discuss it with him. But he has a specific line on what he sees as being challenge setting, and we've discussed this a few times.
Yeah.
So I'll reach out to him and make sure that there's a little bit of counterpoint that I've put through, because I do agree with the work he's doing, but just some of the stuff, some of the aspects are not in agreement with what I see as being there. So I will reach out to him and add that to the report if necessary, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, we'll probably asynchronously, if we keep each other informed about that. But yes, it could use a counterpoint, so that would be really appreciated, Phil, because obviously, however good the oversight stuff George has done, and I have said to George, look, all we're looking for is an overview. But as you say, Phil, he is one person, so it would be good to get a kind of counter view from you. That would be very valuable.
He's also been doing specific work towards a specific goal. So
yeah,
and I've discussed the various things with him in the past as well. So
yeah,
I think we're fine to work that out.
Yeah, okay. And maybe we can discuss the format of the report towards the end, but if we go over the particular deliverables one by one, because there's still some open questions about the final report. But if we move now on to problem sensing, Catalyst Circle problem sensing, and Tivo and Alison and myself and Nadia had a kind of wrap-up meeting on Tuesday. Tivo or Alison would like to talk about that, or any impressions on that?
Yeah,
You're on mute.
Yeah.
I think that was a great discussion, and it felt to me that this kind of process is going to continue, because it does seem to be bringing value. In addition, this work we have been doing, like describing the questions and like thinking of the process, what these how to problem sense, has opened up some opportunities in different networks to use that research. So for example, recently I'm trying to test out creating tasks using that problem sensing methodology. But it was not related to the retrospective.
So to test out waiting tasks. Do you have any thoughts on it, Alison?
Yeah, I would just add two kind of general takeaways. One is that we spent a lot of time, and I think the circle has spent a lot of time talking about the process for getting problems on the board and putting problems on the board. I think there's less attention that's been spent on how problems move across the board and critically how problems get closed out. And so that's a potential area of focus. And then the second takeaway from the wrap-up meeting was that it would be good to get more participation from the circle.
Absolutely, yeah. In fact, we did on the mirror boards, we kind of, at the last part, we did a kind of retrospective review of what we've done over the past, I think there's 4 working meetings we've done, that was the 5th one. And obviously I need to document that, and we need to compress that into a kind of summary for the final report. But then we did identify some conclusions, didn't we, Tivo and Alison? And they were particularly focused on, focusing on moving things across the board and then involving involving particularly more circle reps. So in CGO 8, I suppose that's the resolution, is to make the suggestion even was actually to maybe reach out to the circle working party timings, and then to coincide with that to just so it's not just Nadia, so there's other circle reps having a voice on this process, and particularly focusing on moving across the board. Sorry, you got your hand up, Vanessa.
Yeah, just quickly, agree with what Alison just said about how it's focusing now maybe on how things move across the board, but just to mention that in the last circle meeting, they also raised the issue of how much detail should go in to the actual ticket. Because there was some confusion about, do we need to record every little thing that we do, or, do we summarize or whatever? So yeah, that's maybe something that they're going to be thinking about.
And I did raise the issue of, because there was the question that we originally defined as an oversight group, and it occurred to me towards the end of what we were doing that we were actually helping design the process, and I did raise that issue with Nigel. I said, look, is that appropriate? And I think the feeling is that circle reps, or particularly Nadia, and I think other circle reps, appreciate working with oversight as a kind of support as well. Did you get that impression, Alison, as well?
I did, and I also think that there's kind of an ongoing question of how the incentivization and compensation structure works. This was not discussed in our meeting, just to be clear, but it is I raised this because it's a work effort, and who should be incentivized and compensated to design processes and workflows, I think, is an interesting question.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
and just to be clear, that was not discussed in our meeting.
No, that is.
Is that question about compensation for the circle members, or this is more people working on behalf of circle members, like in subcircles?
I mean it a very broad question around, it's a scope question, but it's also an incentivization question. Who has the mandate to build the processes that the circle follows, and who is incentivized and compensated for doing that work.
I see.
Alison, was there any sense that, like you two, though, and Stephen, doing that, were you doing that partly as circle mentors, or not really?
I had never thought about that as a circle mentorship.
Okay,
capacity.
I just wondered because it
Yeah,
seems
no.
like it would have been partly that as well.
Yeah, I mean, that mandating issue is really interesting, and that's kind of the thing that kind of made me slightly uncomfortable. I suppose I kind of took the initiative on it, because what happened at the beginning of Circle, the beginning of our oversight of Circle coincided with new members. Okay, so we kind of took a kind of support role at the beginning with designing the problem sensing process, and what's that turned into is a kind of, it's become an issue, I suppose, hasn't it, Alison? Because it's a as you say, it's a scoping issue for us, and it's a mandating issue, because we are supposed to, at the end of the day, be overseeing Circle, or at least not completely overseeing the problem sensing of Circle. That's what we're supposed to be doing, and so that kind of raises the mandating issue. Sorry, Phil, and then Cameron.
Yeah, it's interesting, some of this mandated stuff. I was talking to Nada the other day about the fact that the official Circle proposal didn't make it through in Fund 8, but we did get various essentially sub-circles funded.
Yeah.
Which in my mind gives them a mandate to put forward a Circle rep to create the new Circle. It doesn't, like, obviously this needs to be discussed much more broadly and understood. But if funding's going to be continually offered to working group circles, I see an advantage towards instead of having an election process, just using funded sub-circles, for lack of a better term, to elect their own representatives. So we're essentially a sub-circle. We can put forward a representative from here to be this human sensory array of the governance that then sits on a circle that can discuss the overall issues amongst other people. So
would you describe that?
Well, there's a problem with that, Phil. I mean, it's an interesting idea, and like, on one level, I understand what you're saying, but then you're reducing the amount of participation in electing circle members. So we already have a process for electing circle members, and that process has already been criticized as not being inclusive enough of the community. So now if you narrowed it down to, say, a sub-circle of 5 people, and 5 people are going to choose,
I wouldn't limit it. Well, but what I'm saying is that this group was voted on by whatever number of wallets, by whatever number of ADA. So it's even more mandated than the small circle elections that are run with half a dozen or a few dozen people that attend, right?
That raises another fundamental issue of, if you're funded, does that equate to legitimacy? Sorry for coming.
Yeah, and
so then
sorry, go ahead.
Well, let me interject another thought, and maybe then we can discuss both Phil and I's thoughts. When I was a circle member, this was easy to foresee, I guess, is that there was already concerns within the community about the circle role and the way the circle was being handled. And so the fact that the funding wasn't approved in some level isn't surprising, because there were concerns about the circle. At the same time, the community's not going to function without leadership. Right now we're dependent on IOG's leadership, and there has to be a transition to community leadership. So my thought is the following, is that maybe there should be a Fund 9 proposal. Not so much, well, I mean, the one to fund the circle should go forward again too. I mean, I think that's important.
Let me just
stop you there. There should be a second proposal, if I could finish first. I think there should be a
little bit of-
second proposal on designing the treasury or compensation for the circle, and that group needs to be looking towards putting in a SIP, you know, an actual change in.
Can I interrupt you? We're straying a little bit
Getting a lot of
into,
stuff, yeah.
we're straying a little bit into solutions here, and so I appreciate. I think this is all very valid conversations, but can we take it to outside of CGO, because this is not oversight. So what we're talking about now, we're talking about solutions.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
And what we should be talking about, what we have talked about, is what we've done a working group with, well, CGO 7, if you like, have done a working group with Circle. Okay, it's strayed a little bit into solutions, but then it's withdrawn back. And Circle have seemed to say they want to continue with CGO 8 to partner with us to help with problem sensing. That is our remit at the moment. We're not here to, well, we don't actually have a mandate or a scope to actually give solutions to this. I know we have our opinions, Camric, you know, so yeah.
Can I just quickly say something about the concept of the circle? The idea was never to have a circle, it was to have circles, right? So what I'm saying here is that there are funded groups that are now representing smaller parts of the community, including ourselves, and others. So there's nothing to stop us from just creating a circle and inviting other people to a circle to operate as a human sensory array, modeling on the circle. You know, so
but obviously this is a very live discussion, and I'm just saying from our perspective, just from the perspective of oversight of community governance, all this really impacts us is that we are going to continue doing oversight of Kata Circle, specifically problem sensing. Now, how that plays out in the next 3 months is going to be very interesting, obviously, because of what we're discussing, because obviously there's a lot of discussion about what that would look like. But from our perspective, we're still like at TiVo, well, hopefully it's going to be you and Alison, TiVo, me, you know, but that's open as well. We can discuss who's going to work on what going forward. But that's all we're going to be doing, Phil and Kenrick.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah.
At this point, I'd say let's leave this discussion for maybe meeting one of the next.
Yeah, and also for informal discussion as well at this stage. But yeah,
sure.
It's not within scope of what we're doing either. Moving on.
Thought I add one thing as an oversight. The expectation, like from the last retrospective meeting, is to oversee how tasks are closed. And right now there is no process. So we kind of put our mentor hats, like Alison said, and also do like 2 roles at once that help to co-create that process to close prioritized problems, but then also oversee how this process is created to allow maximum participation, or at least a variety of thought.
We're kind of walking a tightrope here, which is quite interesting in the sense that I completely agree with you, TiVo. We've effectively Circle are asking on Nadia as well for help, or how do you close the circle problem? That's another thing that came out of the workshops. But also there's you know, so yeah, that is something that needs, in terms of the final report, we just need to summarize what we said in the Miro board and what's in the documentation down to 1 page. And to summarize that, I might be reaching out to TiVo and Alice in the next few weeks for you to help with that in terms of that summary, and certainly to review that. But that will be, in terms of our final report, literally talking about a paragraph or 2, which is going to summarize what we've done, and people can refer back to the detail. And then we will obviously come to some conclusions here, which will be reflecting these issues, like the issue of what is the balance between oversight and the mandating, revising the process, which is in a nutshell, maybe expressing it better than that. But absolutely, TiVo, they've asked our help, you know, so what do we do with that? And we need to think about that for the next iteration of community governance oversight. But time's moving on. If we can move on to the other deliverable, which is kind of broken into, which is DREPs, and it's mostly around what you're doing, Kenrick, around the DAO literature review. So if you could talk about how we can wrap up that for F7.
Yeah, so I can talk about the completion of this. So the group went well. We had 3, I think, meetings as a group every other week. And there's a team of about 5 people that kind of have coalesced with working with Steve and I on the literature review. There was one paper in particular on measuring power in liquid democracies that we did a kind of very thorough review of. And that's in a document that Steve and I have compiled. And then there were some other reviews done, although the input on that is less complete. But it gives us a good start towards the transition for Fund 8, where we're going to be working as a team to put a white paper together on what we're tentatively calling measuring socioeconomic health in, and I'm not sure what the last phrase should be, whether it's liquid democracies to keep it general, or it's delegated representatives to be specific to catalysts, but that's part of what we'll be working out as a team.
Yeah. I'm just so we're on the same page. You're kind of drafting the kind of an interim document, which is like a report which summarized our meetings. What I've been doing, Kenrick, I have been doing more detailed documentation of the actual meetings. I must admit, I do have a bit of a backlog here. There was actually 3 key meetings. The first meeting included, and I've got this on the screen share here so you can see who the attendees were, with Amar George, Kenrick Jack, Briggs, myself, Steph McCready, and Thomas Torsten. And then meeting 2 was with the same, but with Philip Laszlos and Steph McCready. There's some interesting content in here. This is why I'm going into detail, Kenrick, because I did a transcript of that.
Yeah.
And then I'll add meeting number 3, and that will be like reference materials, hopefully, for your summary. Yeah. And then your summary.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So your summary then will fit into the final report. Maybe do a summary of a summary, if you like, or something like that. Yeah.
And the other thing to comment is we are making good use of the Zotero bibliography tool as a team. I'm still learning its capabilities and weaknesses.
Yeah.
Mostly it's been a very good tool. However, in trying to finalize the document, I'm not convinced that it actually integrates well with Google Docs.
Right.
And that was one of the key features that I was counting on. So I'm hoping that either take some time myself, or if another member of the team can kind of troubleshoot that and resolve what the issue was.
Yeah, I mean, I'm, in terms of the final report, I don't want to preempt your conclusions because I haven't had time to read your draft report. But obviously the draft report for what we've done to date needs to be completed. And there probably needs to be some kind of conclusion, Kenrick. So, and obviously or summary of what we're doing. So.
Okay, yeah, because we've got, it's from, now you're referring to the literature review document itself, but you'd like a conclusion section? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, but the conclusion is not really, conclusion may be the wrong word, because what we have done is set up a DAO literature review. We've started while we were in Fund 7, okay? And that took us to 3 meetings and then we did this. So it's really summarizing what we did and why that was important. Okay. And that's it. And my own view is that it was important because we began to look at academic papers relating to liquid democracy, didn't we? And we looked at those particular papers, or 2 key papers, And obviously we need to say this in summary, so and just say why that was important.
Okay.
We don't need to, obviously we're not going to come to any conclusions because we've only just begun. So I suppose the basic compute, from my perspective, it seems to be a good launch pad.
Right. Okay.
For going
so what
forward.
what I can do is, in the document I've been working on with the team, I will add a conclusion section that, as you said, sort of summarizes what's been complete, what problems have been identified, and what the plan forward is going to be.
I'm imagining it like a couple of paragraphs, and each one of these deliverables will probably have a slide or two in our final town hall report, Kenrick. So it would just be like, we did this, this is what we got, that kind of thing. Okay. Now,
as a reviewer, I think that the DAO literature is a great source of like reading or getting summaries of white papers, and I hope that it's gonna do more. One suggestion: before you start recording, maybe try like coordinating. Is everybody seeing the same page? Because I got a bit annoying that like 20 minutes of that last video was spent on trying to figure out how to do anything.
I mean, we had some technical difficulties. We're using, I think that's a fair point. I mean, I think Kenrick would agree with that we had some technical difficulties with Zotero. And going forward, maybe Kenrick, if we structure our working meetings better, I'm quite willing to chair if you like, and then you can do, then we can maybe meet a more fixed agenda, and then we can timestamp the meetings better. So that when people look back at our meetings, you know, so I'm not saying I'm going to speak, I just chair, Kenrick, and then we say, you know, so we have discrete sections so people can then skip things, TiVo. So if we're discussing something that's not, if we're discussing Zotero or something, and people are not interested in that, they can skip on. Is that okay, TiVo? Yeah, okay. So maybe we'll do that. Is that okay, Kenrick? We'll maybe look at that.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. And then maybe we'll put something in the final report. I did record, well, also QA DAO actually, is that right, Vanessa, are doing documentation of the workshops. The DREP workshops, and we could feed in on a brief summary of what has happened with DREPs to date, you know, in the final report. Very brief, couple of sentences on that to complement the DAO literature review. But if that, unless I've missed anything on DREPs for, I'll carry on to the next one, okay? Which is governance parameters. And this was interesting, how CGO evolved on this, because originally we said we took Harris at his word and thought that, well, this is no longer about governance parameters because it's on hold. That changed quite suddenly, or quite around a couple of meetings ago, and I can't remember the exact context. I think Phil actually drove this a lot, actually. But then also Alison as well, and we had a meeting with Harris, culminated in a meeting with Harris. This meeting is in my backlog. I'm doing a transcript of it. It's going to be fully documented and timestamped as evidence for questions, because it's a very interesting meeting, people who were there, in terms of Harris answering questions about governance parameters. There was also workshops done with TiVo on what is a parameter. Alison.
Yeah, and I thought we left that meeting with agreement from Harris that he would start participating in the CGO regular meetings. Did we need to follow up on that, or where does that stand?
I thought, hang on.
I thought he's interested in joining whenever we have that specific meeting, not every single week meeting.
Yeah, that was my impression as well, yeah.
I think it was not necessarily him as well. It might have been another representative on his behalf, maybe. So if I remember correctly.
So that is an issue. That's an interesting.
Yeah, because things changed now. Yeah. Maybe Chris is now in his shoes.
I mean, this is an interesting issue from what kind of IOG participation do we want going forward in these meetings? I mean, I'd be interested to hear what people's views are on that. So, Do you think we should, Tiva, do you think it should be as and when with that we should invite particular members of IOG to?
I think it doesn't mean particular. Anybody who is interested to join from IOG should be welcome.
Okay, Vanessa first, then Phil, and then Alison. So Vanessa.
I mean, I agree, Thibaut, that anybody interested should be able to come, but I actually felt it was really effective that we invited Harris to a specific separate meeting where we had clarified a lot of things that we wanted to ask. And it just felt quite effective that we were able to go, oh, this, and he was able to answer. Whereas you can't tell what's going to come up in a meeting to invite somebody in advance. That's my only feeling.
Yeah, that's a good point. Phil.
Yeah, I'm in agreement there, but basically a standing open invite for whoever at IOG wants to come, and a reminder that the meeting's on maybe, but I would say either a separate meeting when it makes sense, like we did last time.
Yeah. Or
if we want to focus a meeting on specific parameter discussion, then inviting to that meeting.
Okay.
That's what I would suggest.
Alison. And then
yeah, I actually have the opposing view to that one. I think it would be beneficial to request that somebody from IOG participates regularly, because one, I think that because we don't know where the discussion is going to go. I mean, for example, we didn't know today we were going to have this big lack of clarity around the budget for Fund 9, and so it's useful to have somebody here because we don't know what's gonna come up. The other thing is, I think it's really hard. It took a lot of effort to get an IOG person to commit to a meeting and have it scheduled. Just from an efficiency standpoint, I think it could be useful to have a commitment from IOG to participate in this meeting.
Right. Okay.
And also, I'm gonna have to drop off.
Okay. Thanks, Alison, for that comment. I mean, maybe we need to take it asynchronously a little bit, maybe consider that question a little bit more, because it seems like we don't have consensus on that. So
maybe you could just, Alison, if you have one more minute, I'll start by just, there is more clarity from IOG needed, but this is what I understand they're trying to do with regard to the budgets. They've set the ADA values now for the total and for each of the challenges. After the voting, they will set the exchange rate, and then that exchange rate will determine how much USD equivalents are funded per project, because the projects are still going to be proposed in US dollars. That's how I understand it.
And that may ultimately be how it works out. But what I learned last night, because I'm not exactly sure who Jack B is, but he was in the DREP meeting this morning. So he's
the lead on DREPs.
So exactly, he was the one making the strong statements that budgets are denominated in ADA, until I pointed out to him that the document with the official results has everything denominated in dollars. So then he got back to me and he said, you're right, we don't internally have clarity on this. So I think not all parts of IOG are in agreement with each other about how it's going to work. So,
and Jack is new to the team. He's been with IOG about 6 months now, I think.
But
may not have fully understood what the changes were for this round.
Yeah, but the point is, but you notice nobody else from IOG was jumping into the chat last night to clarify. So I think that what we need to do is get a very clear statement from IOG on exactly what is meant.
That doesn't, my comment doesn't preclude that need.
Okay, yeah.
I'm just saying what I understand to be their intent, but they have not put it in writing clear enough.
Absolutely. And that's very much an oversight issue, because it's about internal consistency and communications from IOG. Absolutely, Alison. So that actually may feed into relevance for having someone from IOG participate going forward.
I wanted to quickly say, Alison, we can't compel an IOG member to come.
Yes, we can.
We can?
I'm joking.
Gunpoint, is it?
Yeah.
No, so, you're right. We can't compel them, but we could strongly request it and
Sure.
make it clear that
As
our
strongly as we can.
expectation. Yes.
Sure. But I guess
All right,
They're all
My-
very supportive. We have
Yeah.
IOG members working with us on the DREP paper.
Yeah,
Sure.
I mean,
my,
each of
my
us in
son
this.
will not thank you if I leave him at school after
What?
the doors
Yeah.
close.
Okay.
Alison.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Alison. Thanks.
Um,
Alison.
I
I mean,
also
can I before I go on to Phil, Matthias, I haven't heard from you on this, so I just want to give Matthias an opportunity to
Well,
speak.
and I should raise my hand again because I
Yeah.
actually have a comment on it.
Okay, Matthias, do you have any views on what we discussed with you?
Yeah, of course, but I'm actually not. I think there's many arguments for and against continuous participation of IoT members within this group particular.
Right.
So right now, I would, if you had to ask me right now, I would not demand a continuous participation, but I think the open invitation is good enough for now.
Right.
But yeah, I'm not 100% clear on any particular standpoint.
Sorry to put you on the spot. I just wanted to.
No. I welcome the opportunity because
okay.
I've been very quiet in this meeting. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm going back to Phil and then Kenrick.
About the US denomination, I mean that I can see issues with this unless we're being paid in ADA at each payment date, because it'll fluctuate anyway. So, but I guess that's beyond scope again. What we're
Again, probably more
point,
any other business or informal discussion as well.
But the point can be put forward to. I mean, we don't have a communication channel at the moment, like we've just pointed out. That
right.
We do have an opportunity to discuss that there is a parameter changer, and that if we start censoring array people about parameter changes, which we've already discussed, we can feed back into
right
IOG/circle/ whatever.
Yeah, I'm
various...
returning back to the final report.
Yeah.
And okay, I know you got your hand up. I know Tibo, you got your hand up. Can you just hear me out for a minute? Because we've got the last 10 minutes of the meeting. The approach I was thinking of taking, it sounds like we may have to have another meeting on this actually, because it's quite a live issue. Is to document the meeting with Harris, and to so that all the questions and answers that we had with Harris are quite clear. And then I was thinking of taking that and then summarizing that for the final report. But it sounds like I need to run that by everyone here first, because there's obviously a live discussion here about what is Oversight's relationship with governance parameters, so, and I know Alison is doing, it seems like we've now come to a view where we're looking out for first of all, questions like, what is a governance parameter? And that's been summarized by Alison at her weekly town hall slides. So we need perhaps some rationale for that, don't you think? I mean, Cameron, you got your hand up here as well. But
yeah, so more broadly on the governance parameters, another person I would recommend reaching out to be included in this is Sebastian from DC Sharp, because he got an award for Fund 8 to be the SIP editor. And while that's broader than the governance parameters, it does include governance parameters, that could be changed through a SIP proposal.
That would be interesting, because he has expressed his reluctance to get involved in cashless governance in the past. But that's, I know Seb as Sebastian, and I'm actually part. I try to attend he's now set up regular Discord meetings for the SIP process, because he's funded to do review SIPs now, isn't he, as you say? So
yeah, it's just a suggestion. And
I mean, as people, if people here support that action, I can reach out to Sebastian Guillemot and invite him. What were you thinking, Cameron, in terms of?
Well, I'm just thinking that since he is going to be working as a SIP editor, and that's one way to kind of officially change governance parameters, is to put it in the SIP proposal. So that's another process that I think is within the scope of overseeing governance parameters.
The Cardano parameters, not Catalyst parameters.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm aware of that. I'm
only
aware of
Catalyst
that,
parameters.
but I still think they.
Well, it would
Can
be
we-
interesting.
It's how you would broach that question, given what Phil's just said, because he will see us as catalyst. Okay, so we can't go to him and say, I'm not quite clear about what we're asking Sebastian to comment on.
Okay.
Do you see? Because his scope is. I mean,
Well,
here's
my question, and the reason I'm bringing it up is the following: is that it's within the Cardano side of things.
Yeah.
One of the parameters get set is the treasury for Catalyst.
Yeah.
So that could potentially change if someone put in a proposal under the SIP process.
I mean, I did take note of a recent tweet he did about he's putting a SIP himself, which actually, funny enough, Charles Hoskinson referred to, weirdly, about tweaking the treasury process.
There you go.
And it occurred to me then, and I kind of hadn't really thought it through, and I would suggest people go and seek this out and read it themselves, that that could impact Catalyst. Couldn't it, Kenrick? So there's crossover there. So it could be, we could be in a situation where we might need to do oversight of Sebastian Gilmore. So, and I'm joking, partly, but it's kind of like there is crossover here, isn't there? Because if Sebastian Gilmore, who by the way is paid to review SIPs, has put in a SIP himself about changing treasury, what's going on there then? And it's been then underwritten by Charles Hoskinson as well. Well, that's interesting, isn't it?
Very nice.
So what's going on here? I'm not saying it's all bad or anything. I'm just saying it's interesting. And how do we go forward on the community improvement process or community suggestions for changing treasury, Cardano treasury, which includes Catalyst treasury?
I wonder, are there any SIPs related to staking keys or voting keys or any changes how they are stored in Cardano or how they are referenced with the new vessel hot fork?
I mean,
maybe that could give like a narrative why to connect.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully we should approach this in a kind of, I would be willing to approach this in a kind of friendly way, but I just know that Sebastian has a certain view of Catalyst. I'm not really sure if there's going to, So, I've been starting to document, funny enough, in our Git book, SIPs, relevant SIPs, because I started noticing that some of the SIPs, like for example, on the audit best practice, and I know this is auditing relating to technical auditing, it's not related to Catalyst auditing, but there's still crossover, Kenrick. When you define standards in Cardano, okay, it impacts Catalyst potentially, so, and that's the issue, isn't it? Is that really what you're getting at as well a little bit, Cameron?
Yeah, and also help me recall this. Okay, so there's a circle, and then there was also a technical committee that is formed now and is working, right? And they're responsible for these governance parameters, correct?
Yeah, but I don't think, it was.
And that's still, okay, and like you're saying, it's a separate process than the SIPs and the Cardano network. But to the extent that there's SIPs that could impact Catalyst, that's what I'm referring to.
Yeah, I think we need to, in a sense, carry that forward. And I think that's not something we're going to address in F7, in CGO 7. It's CGO 8, but it's certainly a live issue, Phil, and we need to start to go towards the end of the meeting. But come on, Phil.
There was talk in that meeting.
Yeah, I have to dial out. See you all.
Thanks, Cameron.
Any last quick questions for me?
No, great contributions, and I think we wrapped up on what we needed to do on the deliverables for final report, but I might reach out to you separately. Thanks.
Yeah, okay.
There was some discussion with Harris about making that internal IOG parameter group, that like the research group, more public and accessible.
When was that discussed, Phil? Do you remember?
On that meeting we had with him.
Okay, when I document that, I'll try and highlight that.
So
the actual picking up on what Kenrick said about the technical council, that was set up in principle. The members were named, if you remember. It included Dor actually, but then it was just dormant. And nothing happened with it.
Yeah, but somewhere they're still discussing. Like someone discussed, like Tevo just mentioned, changing the name from CA to PA.
Yeah, and I presume. Well, again, this comes back to questions of communication and collaboration with IG staff, doesn't it, on governance things?
Yes. So that discussion would be good to have the ear on to feed it to the community while it's happening for feedback. And that could be, there isn't the oversight role fits into that. So that could be included in our report that says our suggestion is that channel opens.
Good point. Okay. That's certainly, I think we need to, again, I was trying to, I probably should have had an agenda item on the actual report.
I thought that was part of what we were going to discuss, but
sorry. So we probably,
I wonder if we need to draft the report before we have the final meeting to discuss the report.
Yeah.
So I think we need to offline draft all these various aspects and have a deadline for submission to the final report, compile that, and then have a discussion about it if we need to have an open just that.
Yeah, I mean, in fact, it's exactly how I was going to wrap up. So, but I should have had a separate agenda item on the report. So, but yes, for the final report, each of these, we have gone through each of the deliverables, like challenge setting, capital circle, DREPs, and we've just discussed governance parameters. Each one of those, as you realize, have different works to be done, a kind of stuff to be done. They may have individual meetings where I followed back to people who were involved in that to wrap up the summary that goes into the final report, Phil. Then we probably need to then put that into a draft document, which we can then distribute amongst all the members here before we meet. Okay, absolutely. And that'll be like a Google document, which we then can go into asynchronously to refine. Okay.
Yes. And comment to bring into the space to discuss if necessary. I mean, we could do it all asynchronously, but I think it's nice to have a final wrap up meeting just to nod. Even if it's like, yep, there's no things, but if there is things to discuss, we've got the space.
No, I was thinking definitely a final meeting which will close down F7 and close down the final report. But obviously, I probably should have, so that's going to be an action item for this meeting. I'll put it in the minutes after we do that. But that will be before we start F8.
Yes.
Okay, and actually it's going to be F8 start may be dependent on that as well. Because at the moment, F8 start is scheduled I've provisionally scheduled it for the end of June. But obviously, we have a lot of work to do here. So that may be pushed out a little bit if we get delayed.
Are we putting a deadline in for that draft, the draft components? Have we discussed or implemented that?
Yes, so it's, it's in the same date as the start of that. So, it's not a strict date, no. So it's mid June, it's mid to late June, so.
Yeah, I think we need to set a more firm date today, if possible.
Right. Okay.
To have the drafts in together to start compiling that final report. I feel like we need to set that date a few weeks out from now, kind of. Okay.
What dates?
Does anyone disagree with setting a firm date for the?
No, I mean, what do other people think?
Anyone?
Okay. Should that be the same day as the closeout meeting, Phil?
No, I feel like that should be before the closeout meeting, so we have time to read and reference before that meeting.
Okay.
So I'm thinking 20th of June, which is a Monday, so it gives kind of the weekend if people are leaving it to the right reports. So
when did you say you'd set the closeout meeting for, or haven't you?
I know I put it in Discord if someone wants to check. I think it's the I think it's the closeout meeting, you mean?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
The closeout meeting would, well, I haven't set the closeout meeting. So, as you say, with Phil, if that was the deadline for the final draft on the 20th of June, and then we will,
and the 30th for the closeout meeting,
which is the Thursday. So it's two
Okay.
Thursdays out from now. We can do the final.
Okay, that'll push out the CGO meeting 8 as well, but that's fine. So we close out for.
It could be. It could also be the. Yeah, no, it's not worth crossing those over. Yeah, sure. So.
Yeah, I don't want to get CGO F8 confused with F7.
Yeah, is that?
I think we provisionally said that we start the fund 8 proposal on the 30th of June, but it's dependent on closing this out. So if we close out, say, on the 30th of June, then obviously the fund 8 meeting will start the next week.
The other option is to bring that 20th to the 13th, and that gives us 10-ish, 11 days instead of.
It depends on how people feel, because. Yeah, I mean,
the question. Can we look at the any other business? I added one section there. I want to see if that's okay to announce or like put it on a record in a sense. The Innovation Fund Research Overview video proposal assessor perspective, because it's quite closely related to parameter changes and a lot of
if we just quickly, let's provisionally just agree these deadlines for the moment, and and I think the 20th gives us, I think, a little bit more time that we're going to need, Phil. Okay, so
yeah,
then moving on to, just quickly, proposal reporting. I've done proposal reporting on the 24th of May, and that's been completed. I won't talk about that because we're going to go on to AOB now and to TiVo's point about the innovation. TiVo.
Yeah. So is it fine to add this video?
Yeah, sure. And if you just want to say something about it briefly, or for the minutes, for the sake of the minutes.
Well, basically, there was 3 sessions. Each of one was over 1 hour long, where community members came together to talk about proposal assessor roles. So back then it was about the community advisors whose work is to assess proposals. And I compiled a 15-minute video where I went over to the process, what were the topics of the sessions themselves, and then gave brief highlighted overview, the main highlights of these discussions.
You mentioned that it was relevant to parameter change. Can you say how that's relevant?
Because apparently community advisor name was changed to proposal assessors.
Right.
And that was like precursors where we thought that what risks and what good it would bring, but there was no discussion, again, no expectations that it will happen.
So there was no.
I'm pretty happy that it did happen.
Do you think there should have been a discussion, or is it just you were putting it out there?
Well, it would have been quite creative. I actually would have said like maybe 2 weeks before that they are planning to it or they're considering it, because I was working a lot on Catholic School documentation and resources, and now we have to kind of go over all of that.
Yeah,
again.
You're right. It does feed into our parameter discussions again, and also this kind of theme of are things sprung on us, which is a kind of reoccurring theme.
Yeah, that was that point way back when we kind of figured we should be looking at parameter changes, because there are, and the IOG is jumping up with them, and probably needs to be more consultative, or at least mention that that's what's happening, even if they do need to progress forward and say that it's going to happen, but at least have that avenue of feedback. So
I suspect, and this is why we probably need that time to digest what we're doing in these deliverables, that theme may come out in our conclusions in our report. So So that's very useful, Tivo and Phil. Thanks very much. And just to wrap up, thanks for going over time, everyone. If anyone has any thoughts for a summary of this meeting for the weekly newsletter, if you could put it into Discord, I have a Discord channel for Community Governance Oversight, and then I'll try and summarize something that Danny can include in his weekly newsletter.
Is the weekly newsletter going out this week? Because Danny's on holiday, isn't he?
That's a good point, actually. I don't know the answer to that. Is he still on? Is he gone on holiday already?
I think he's meant to be back like Tuesday next week or something. So,
Okay.
yeah.
I don't know. I'm the only person. Does anyone here know?
We can ask on the integration channel and see what's going on.
Yeah, that's.
I'd imagine probably no one would be picking that up, but maybe someone did.
Yeah, that's weird. Okay, unless there's finally any feedback for the meeting or any other business that we've missed.
I just had a quick question for Tivo. You know those videos that you put together, where were those meetings? Were they like after town halls, or where were they from, those meetings?
He's gone, I think.
He's
Oh,
gone. He's
oh,
gone.
sorry.
He's done a run.
I'll watch them and find out.
Okay, I'll take that as no. The next meeting, well, you know, we're kind of out of official meetings, so we're into the deadline of final drafts of the 20th of June. This will involve, there'll be meetings prior to this going back to those deliverables here. And then we'll aim to do a closeout for the 30th of June, but that closeout will be looking at a final draft.
And
yeah, go on.
Sorry, just to be clear, each part of the draft has an official person that's following that through, right? Like George is doing one piece.
Yeah.
You're doing one piece.
Let me recap. Challenge setting, George. Well, some of them have teams actually. So circle problem sensing is going to be Tivo, Alison, and me. Okay. DREPS is mostly Kenrick, but it also we have documented stuff that's changed. So I might ask Vanessa if you or others who have any information on DREPS, we might put in this information. Okay. But that's mostly Kenrick. Governance parameters is we're going to have a separate meeting probably about this. But it's mostly going to come from, so I probably should make that clear that here, I think, so we're going to take the documentation of the meeting with Harris, okay, and then review that essentially to come up to see how that will fit into the final report. And that is it so it's more team ownerships there, Phil.
Yeah, sure. I just wanted to make sure that we've got everything covered and each section has responsibility that will be making sure the deadline's met. That's what I was checking.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll stop the share. So if I just stop the recording now.
Losing everyone.
I think everyone's gone off to be a DREP.